What is up, everybody? Your boy DFS Jimmy bringing you this week's early week course preview from fansharesports.com. Back after the Zurich and our sort of week off. Really, the RBC Heritage kind of mixed in the middle there, but I don't know about you guys. I'm still a little bit hung up on the Masters. I found it tough to get into the last couple of weeks for DFS. I am recharged. I am ready, and I am looking forward to this week's edition. I am looking forward to a big boy golf course again, and sort of the gap between majors. We got a couple of weeks here, and then back into majors. So looking forward to getting into it. This week we are at Quail Hollow, a true big boy golf course. Par 72, 7,500 plus yards. Host of the PGA Championship site last year. Webb Simpson's home course. Johnson Wagner's home course. Several other guys make their home here year round, and pretty well known quantity in the golfing world. Like I said, it is a big boy golf course. Originally designed by George Cobb, Tom Fazio updated it in 2016, toughened it up. Even Tiger's, if you read Tiger's comments over the last couple of years, he talks about how much tougher this golf course is now compared to what it used to be when he dominated. But either way, pretty difficult track behind me. Last year ranked number 5 overall in difficulty, so not going to be a ton of things given away. Average winning score here kind of varies, but the key number is like 2 to 4 under a day is going to have you in contention. A good moving day on Saturday, and you're going to be in good shape here at Quail Hollow. But par 72, Parkland style golf course, as you can see behind me. Lots of undulation in the fairways, lots of undulation on the greens, and large bunkering. The water is here behind me on this hole. This is number 14. Not a ton of water on this course. For the most part, though, set just outside of South Charlotte. It is a tree-lined course. There are some elevation changes throughout, but predominantly a Parkland-style tree-lined golf course. Difficult to hit fairways here at this track. Part of that is going to be due to the fact that you got to hit a lot of drivers. Part of it is due to the kind of setup in the course here, and then the other part of that is due to the fact that the fairways are usually pretty firm, and it's usually running pretty good here, which does allow some of the shorter hitters that we've seen throughout the last few years compete. On paper, this is very much a bomber's track, but without fail, it seems like we end up with 3 to 4 real strong competitors that are of the shorter hitting variety. Johnson Wagner comes to mind here. Again, not a big hitter, has been able to compete. Same thing, Webb Simpson, home course. But it doesn't have to be your home course for guys to compete at this track, really. If the fairways are running and the course isn't super wet or super damp, your shorter hitters can compete here, but they are going to face, instead of 7 and 8 irons and even 6 irons into greens, they're going to be hitting 5s, 4s, hybrids, 5 woods, things like that. And just about everybody is going to hit driver off the tee everywhere here. We're going to get it in the scorecard like we normally do, and you'll see a little bit more there. But it is a tough track. It does require 4 really strong days of golf. It is not a runaway birdie fest by any stretch of the imagination, but there are quite a few holes that you can score on. So we're going to take a look at DraftKings point scoring. We're going to take a look at who's finished and played well here in the past. Excuse me. And we're also going to take a look at our scorecard like we normally do. So behind me, you've got hole 14. I highlighted this hole because I wanted to show a couple of things here. One, the undulation in the fairway you can see behind me here. Lot of not flat lies around Quail Hollow. A lot of places for guys to get uncomfortable. A lot of places, even if you do find the fairway, you might not have a flat lie. You might not have a great look. And a lot of undulation. You can see that big ridge that runs through the green back there. A lot of undulation in the greens here. More 3 putts than normal at this track. And that's due to a couple of things. One, the greens aren't prohibitively large. They're not big. They're really right around tour average. But because guys are hitting such long irons and long hybrids and stuff into these greens here, it they're not as close to pins as they normally would be. So you end up with guys having longer putts, which brings 3-putt into play because the greens here run fast, period. They are pretty fast greens around here. So keep an eye on the weather, but the weather looks good so far early in the week. Looks like we might have a little wind on Friday, but overall should be set for a really strong week of golf and some great conditions for the guys to play in throughout the weekend. Do have another hole I want you to look at. This is 18. Quail Hollow is definitely known for its closing stretch of holes, the Green Mile. 16, 17, and 18, a brutal stretch. We'll take a look at those holes here on the scorecard, but behind me you can see where, this is a look from the front of the tee boxes. You've got trouble down the left, trouble down the right, trees, water, and just a whole lot of green in between with a lot of mounds and fairways in the way. Plenty of bunkers protecting the right side of the green. That creek runs along protecting the left side of the green. Close to a 500-yard hole to close and a difficult par 3 before it. So really, really tough closing stretch of holes. A lot can change with regard to outright winners, things like that. So make sure you pay attention this week to who you're stacking in your teams and who's going to close out a tournament that has 3 of the toughest holes on tour. Annually ranked as the toughest holes on tour. And all 3 of them are here back to back to back to close out this tournament. So, not for the faint of heart when it comes to trying to close out a win on the PGA Tour here. That said, we've had some really interesting winners throughout history here at this track that don't necessarily fit the strength of the field and are real big, surprising, long odds kind of winners. You got Derek Ernst, James Hahn. Some of these guys just won a few career wins, if their only career win has been here. So interesting kind of setup. So we'll look into who's played well here in the past, but just suffice to say that don't be afraid to play some of your long shot guys this week. A lot of opportunity for guys to step up and play well across 4 days. Tournament's probably not going to run away from them. And if their ball striking's on, it doesn't really matter what irons they're hitting. There's enough green for them to work with. There's enough fairway for these guys to work with. And if it's running, your shorter hitters can compete if they can keep it in the fairway here. So a lot to take in. Let's get into the scorecard. Before I do that, make sure you get over to fansharesports.com. Check those guys out. While you're at it, hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button down below. Helps us out a lot. Helps me out a lot. I'd certainly appreciate it. So, now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into the card. Let's get into players that have played well here in the past. See if we can get an angle on how to attack Quail Hollow this week. So, in our scorecard, like I mentioned, big boy golf course, 7,500 plus yards, brutal closing stretch of holes. As you can see here, the last 3 holes all play over par, very comfortably so. Expect players to drop shots trying to close out their round, especially guys chasing. Last opportunity for birdie is going to be the par 5 15th. A lot of guys are going to be going for that. Is one of the longer holes. Definitely reachable in 2, though, if you put yourself in position off of the tee. The other interesting note about this track is just long irons in general. It is a bomber's track. Long irons, mid irons are crucial for success around this track. They truly are, and a lot of that has to do with the 4 over 200-yard par 4s here. They only account for 15% of your DraftKings points, but they are tough golf holes that can absolutely change the momentum of your round and can absolutely shape the outcome of the tournament, especially hole 17. Brutally difficult. A quarter of the field is going to bogey this hole. No bailout to speak of. Lots of water surrounding the left hand or the right hand side of the hole. Basically a peninsula, nearly an island. So par 3 is very difficult here. Definitely requires precision ball striking with your long irons, and that carries throughout the rest of the round. You'll see where most of the points are going to be earned, and that's the par 5s. And that when we get into the golfers that have played well here in the past, you're going to understand and see why. You definitely have to score on the par 5s here. You got to be aggressive. You got to have the length to get to them. Most of the field can get to 2 of them. The other 2, not so much. The 2 on the backside definitely are more 3-shot holes for some of the field. Depending on where your drive is, depending on what the run out is, guys are going to be going for it. But two of the holes you kind of got to be a bomber to get to. And that's where the DraftKings point scoring really comes in. I think you'd be surprised at some of the names we see at the top of the list for DraftKings point scoring, as well as finishing position. Suffice to say, though, you look at the largest grouping of holes on the course. 5 holes that are 450 yards or longer. Tough, big boy par fours. Got to hit driver off the tee. Got to find the fairway, and hopefully you're not 3-putting. Because again, the greens are fairly large, not prohibitively large, but you got to be in the right area. And when you're hitting long irons into greens, it's hard to go pin seeking. So keep that in mind this week. Look for current form. We're going to check out some course history, though. So without any further ado, let's look at guys that have played well here in the past and guys that have had a lot of success here. So average course history, Phil Mickelson at the top of the list, 6.0, coming in 29th ranked in my model. But we'll get down here. We'll look at DraftKings points scored. And I do want to draw your attention to a couple of things really quickly. First of all, average DraftKings points scored and the times attempted. Jason Day's only played here once in the last 3 years, but dominated with 114 DraftKings points, 75 points gained on the field. Rory, though, is topping the charts with an average of 22 birdies per tournament. Rory loves this track. This track loves Rory. No surprise. Big game off of the tee. Rory's noted as liking tree-line tracks. It sort of frames the hole for him. It gives him something, gives him a target, gives him something to shoot at. Rory likes that. It comes out in his play here. Interestingly enough, Rory does not average a whole eagle per tournament here, but finds plenty of birdies. Very aggressive is Rory off of the tee, very aggressive into the greens, and when he's on, one of the world's absolute best long iron ball strikers. So not only does he have the game off the tee to take advantage of the length, get where he needs to get, he also has the long iron game to take advantage of some of the more strategic holes and some of those holes where even if you hit a big drive, you still have 180, 190 yards in for these guys. So this is Rory's stomping grounds. He's played well here annually. I do want to shift, to some of the other guys that have averaged like 18 or more birdies. And some of these names, really kind of all over the place. Phil, though, always a good DraftKings point scorer, has played well historically here at this track. Fits his game really well. Scrambling comes into play quite a bit here because greens are going to be missed with these long irons in, and guys are not going to be hitting out of the fairway a lot. A lot of fairways get missed here. A lot of that has to do with the fact you got to hit driver. The other part is they're running out quite a bit. This time of the year, when they've shifted the tournament, you've got an overseeded golf course and you've got some ryegrass that blends with a bit of that Bermuda for the rough. Makes it a lot more predictable for these guys to come out of the rough than it would be otherwise. For example, when they had the PGA Championship here, huge rough, lots of deep Bermuda, very difficult for golfers to kind of figure out how the ball's going to come out of there. A lot of flyers. The overseeded rye, not so much. Very predictable for these guys. Not a big deal in missing the fairway. That's why you see guys like Rory, guys like Phil, kind of at the top of the list. Jason Day having a lot of success here. Not the most accurate drivers of the golf ball, but big hitters and guys that know how to scramble, guys that can get up and down, guys that can strike the ball well with long irons. So, interesting notes there. A couple of short hitters that have done really well here. Roberto Castro has played this course pretty well throughout the years. Let's get back to course history, though. You look at some of the guys that have some consistency here. Chesson Hadley, really interesting. Part of this is probably, he's used to playing on Bermuda, grew up in this part of the country. But Chesson's a great long iron ball striker, not a big hitter, not going to put it out there a long ways, but has found himself 3 top 20s or better in the last 3 years after having missed the cut in 2014. Ranks poorly in my model, has not been playing great as of late, but Chesson Hadley's sort of a case study in the sense that you don't have to be a bomber to succeed here at this track. Look at Robert Streb, put together 4 solid years. I say there's only 4. Normally we have 5, but 2017 was not played here. If you guys remember, it was played at Eagle Point. Brian Harmon won. That was the year they were revamping everything for the PGA Championship. So we don't have data from 2017. 2018 is a bit of a different golf course than 16, 15, and 14. So to give you guys a better look, just take a look at who won 2018 and games that were successful. I think Phil is sort of the answer as to what we're looking for here. It doesn't really matter what the course looked like after the revamps. There weren't significant changes that really changed the golf course. There were holes that were changed, some angles that were changed, but all in all, the same skill set applies. Long golf course, got to be a good scrambler. Long iron ball striking is important, got to hit the par fives. That's Phil Mickelson. Up, down, left, right, and center. That's Phil. So, hitting bombs is Phil. Great video from the Masters if you guys didn't see it. But yeah, I think that epitomizes what skill set really plays it well here year in and year out. Same thing with Rory. Doesn't matter they changed the course and did this or did that. Rory still found success here in the top 20 in a year where he wasn't playing his best golf. So the games do tend to carry over despite the course changes. That's why I'm not terribly concerned. I am a bit interested to see how the greens fare this year compared to the last couple as they've replaced them with the Bermuda. The Bermuda should be much more mature this year, should be a bit softer, maybe encourage a bit more scoring than we've seen in the past here at this tournament. But still, you gotta hit drivers a lot. You gotta hit a lot of long irons. It's a tough golf course, point blank. Period. So even if we see a few more birdies, I don't see this course or this tournament getting away from anybody. I don't see anybody really running away with it unless it gets wet. If weather moves in, something like that gives some of these big bombers a real advantage. Conditions that Rory and maybe Tony Finau, Phil Mickelson might thrive in, comparatively speaking, but. All things considered, you look at guys that have played well here in the past, and I think you can expect them to play well again. You look at pattern math, if anybody's concerned with pattern math, Justin Rose likely due to win this week with a third, didn't play, or a fifth, didn't play, a third, didn't play, and then, theoretically you should be first this year. But, You definitely have to have your whole game here. You can't really fake it around a track like this. There's just too much that's required of your game from a long iron ball striking standpoint to get yourself even in proximity to pins to make putts. So definitely prioritize long iron ball striking. When in doubt, take a bomber this week. Only a few short hitters have found tons of success here. That said, like I mentioned earlier, there have been some really wacky winners here throughout the years. So if you are playing outrights, don't be afraid to take a stand on your guy. If you think your guy fits this course, or maybe he's missed 12 straight cuts in a row and you think it's his breakout spot, throw some shekels on him. James Hahn, I think, had missed 8 cuts in a row prior to his breakout victory here in 2015, 2014, something like that. Either way, don't be afraid to take guys that you feel like have an opportunity to play well here. This tournament has produced some kind of weird winners, some weird top 5 guys, and depending on conditions, your shorter hitters can certainly get in there if they have a great ball striking week. So, I put my model together like I do every week. Shifted it the wrong way. And no surprise, Rory McIlroy, #1 ranked, coming off a fairly disappointing Masters performance, still scoring a lot of DraftKings points though. Rory should be the favorite and will be heavily owned this week. Gary Woodland, interesting player. Theoretically, course fits him very, very well. Having a good year. A bit of a stumble mid-season so far, but interesting to see Gary ranking #2 in the model. Tony Finau, no surprise there. 3 strong made cuts. Course seems to fit him. Big-time bomber. If his putting could just come around, I think you could see Tony Finau play quite a bit better here. But the greens are kind of tricky, and the Bermuda change probably has messed with him a little bit. Excited to see how Finau fares this year. JB Holmes is sort of the typical guy you might think of to pop up and win a tournament like this. Big-time bomber, puts his game together for 3 or 4 days, finds himself in contention down the stretch, notched a victory here in 2014. I know why the model likes him. I get that because it's based on hole distance and performance over the last 50 rounds. I don't think I'm going to be heavy on Mr. Holmes this week. Jason Day is very interesting to me, being 10th ranked in the model, defending champion and all. Hadn't played previous years, but course fits Day. Fits him pretty well, and obviously, defending champion. But I see this course as a good fit for him. Ricky Fowler. ranked number 12th in the model, put 3 fairly strong performances together, 1 top 5 here at this tournament. Game has been solid all year long. Do not be surprised to find a guy like Ricky in the mix throughout the weekend this week. Would be great actually to see Ricky notch a victory here at Quail Hollow. You start to move down. Phil is interesting. I'm not really sure why the model doesn't like Phil as much as his course history would indicate. But either way, Phil fits this course really well in the sense that he's, despite his age, can definitely bomb it off the tee still. Can get into the greens, great ball striker, but that magic around the greens, a lot of sand on this course, a lot of sand saves come into play, a lot of short game comes into play. Probably an underrated skill set with regard to notching a top 5 or a victory here. But I think it's a very important skill set when you look at the course and how this tournament sets up, how the course sets up. I think it's important to have a short game if you're going to try and find yourself, landing inside that top 10 come Sunday, at the end of the day after it's all said and done. If you're going to find a top 10, I think you need to be a pretty solid scrambler, and you're going to have to make quite a few saves. Interesting to me, Scott Stallings ranks 13th, has never played this course really well. The model likes him because of hole length, but obviously something doesn't fit for Scott here at this track. But all in all, guys, it is a tough track. It is the kind of track you gotta have your game about you. All 4 days are going to be required. There may be Rory and Rose are maybe the only 2 guys that could put their B games on and kind of get it around here. Tony Finau, Ricky Fowler, maybe the other 2. The rest of the field, decent field strength, a lot of opportunity for some mid-tier guys to come up and play well. And like I mentioned, we've had some weird winners here. We've had some guys that just put it together for 4 days. Don't be afraid to go a little off the board with your value picks this week, with your low 7Ks, high 6K guys. Those guys absolutely have an opportunity to put 4 good rounds together here and put a good showing on. So don't be afraid to go with your gut as you're rounding out lineups this week. All that said, I'm your boy DFS Jimmy. Make sure you give the like button a click down there, subscribe button, get over to fansharesports.com, check those guys out. Till next week, best of luck.